Plan Commission meeting of Tuesday, June 9, 2015. Roll call.
Dickman here.
Johnston here.
Rillo here.
Bekavich is excused. Kavita here.
Guzikowski here.
Corral here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Item 2 is minutes of the May 26, 2015 meeting.
Dickman makes a motion that we approve the minutes of the May 26, 2015 meeting.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Rillo, aye.
Kavita, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Corral, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Item 3 is significant common council actions. Carrie.
Common Council approved 2 resolutions for certified survey maps at the properties at 6871, 6881, 6881R, 6933, 6939, and 6955 South 13th Street. That is the Southfield property. And also a certified survey map for the Oakview Business Park. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Under item 4, we have a 6 p.m. sign appeal hearings. We have 2. And I'm assuming Pete Wagner will read the first one.
Correct. Thank you, Mayor. This is a public hearing notice, City of Oak Creek, notice of public hearing before the Plan Commission. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held Tuesday, June 9, 2015, 6 p.m. at the Oak Creek City Hall, Common Council Chambers, 8640 South Howell Avenue, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154. The appellant is Paul Rodermacher for Water Street Brewery, tax key number 8139030. Property located at 140 West Town Square Way, requesting a variance from section 17.0334, Appendix B, Section B, parentheses quantity, of the Drexel Town Square Mixed-Use Development District General Development and Regulating Plan, which states, quote, 1 primary sign per entry facade per tenant is allowed. If granted, the variance would allow Water Street Brewery to install 1 wall sign on the north, west, and east elevations of the building and 3 6-foot logo signs on the northeast and west elevations of the water tower. Zoning of the property is DTS MUPDD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this 14th day of May 2015. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Mayor Steve Scafidi, Chairman.
I'll make 3 calls for comment. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then state your comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian Dunton. I'm on behalf of Paul Rodemacher from Sign Me Up.
Do you have any official presentation or anything?
We had submitted some information as far as just if we have your approval to put the 3 logos on the.
Why don't you just give us a quick overview of that?
Sure, I can do that. The applicant is requesting a 20-inch raceway mount channel letter set in red neon on the north side of the building as illustrated in your packet. The sign would read Water Street Brewery. In addition, on the water tower, on 3 sides, on the east, west, and north elevation, there are 6-foot round vinyl logos attached to the water tower. This is in addition to the signs that were approved by the Plan Commission earlier this year. And as because of the general regulating plan limits the signs to entrance facades, the applicant is here tonight for a variance allowing for these additional signs on the building.
Okay. When I have you step back, and then we'll bring you back for the actual discussion and vote.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I'll make second call for comment on the public hearing 4A. Third and final call for comment on 4A. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and move to the second public hearing, which is for Chick-fil-A. Pete?
Yes. The City of Oak Creek, notice the public hearing before the Plan Commission. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held Tuesday, June 9th, 2015, 6 p.m. at the Oak Creek City Hall, Common Council Chambers, 8640 South Howell Avenue, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154. The appellant is Jason Hill for Chick-fil-A. Tax key number 8139047. The property is located at 150 West Town Square Way. To request two variances are requested from section 170334 of the Municipal Code, Appendix B, Section B, quantity of the Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District General Development Plan and Regulating Plan, which states, quote, 1 primary sign per entry facade per tenant is allowed. If granted, this variance would allow the applicant to erect 1 wall sign on the west elevation, which is a non-entry facade of the building, and 1 wall sign on the south elevation, also non-entry facade of the building at 150 West Town Square Way. Zoning of the property is DTS MUS PDD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this 14th day of May 2015. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Steve Scafidi, Chairman. This is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to make a comment regarding the subject of the hearing, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and proceed to address the commission with your comments. Mr. Mayor.
I'll make 3 calls. First call.
I'm Ben Holliday. I'm with Clayton Signs. My address is 5198 North Lake Drive, Lake City, Georgia. And I can give you a card.
What was your first name?
That's Ben
Ben?
Yeah.
And last name?
Holliday.
Holiday. Okay. Thank you, Ben.
I have some extra information besides what was submitted, if you can pass that out. What I've passed out there are some renderings that the architect put together of the building as it would be if the signs were all granted. As you can see, the signs on these renderings here are tastefully and appropriately put on each wall, reasonable size, not overstated, not too large or gaudy. What is Chick-fil-A's business is a quick serve restaurant, meaning that they depend, 80% of their business comes from people that are out and happen to see their signage, and that's how reason they go to their restaurants. So they are very, very dependent on signage for their livelihood and for the success of the business. And with signs only on 2 sides of the building, especially when the back has a street to it, that puts them at a severe disadvantage of being able to be seen from all vantage points. And in this particular case, the sign that's on the rear of the building and on the one side of the building are the ones that we're asking for. Which in the renderings that you have up here, the one that's on the lower part here is the one we're asking. And there's another, should be another. The one that's right there on the lower part of that one as well.
Okay.
That's basically it.
Okay, I'll have you step back, and we'll have a second call for public comment on item 4B. And third and final call for public comment on the public hearing on the Chick-fil-A proposal. Final call. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Doug, you think we should go to the actual items, or should we go to the old business first? What would you like to do?
Let's take the signs.
Perhaps we could just go ahead and take action on the 2 sign hearings.
Yeah.
Good thought. Let's go to 6A. We'll circle back to 5A. 6A is a sign appeal request for the property at 140 West Town Square Way. Submitted by Paul Rodermacher, Sign Me Up of Wisconsin, allow Water Street Brewery to install 3 signs in the grain tank in the north elevation and a wall sign in the north elevation, tax key number as listed. So, any questions from the commission or the audience?
I mean, the one thing I will note is that actually in both of these instances, but particularly for Water Street Brewery, that this sign package, I believe, was consistent with the architectural renderings that were shown at the site plan approval. However, the actual review of the plans was brought back at a later date. And upon investigation about these sign requirements of the Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District, that's when the language was not discovered, but it was just in that review, it was determined that the entire sign package could not have been approved. That's why you've got certain of the signs were approved by the Plan Commission, certain others were brought back for the variance hearing and procedure, but in essence, it is consistent with the architectural renderings that you saw when you approved the site and building plans.
We're really talking about the neon sign, correct? Is that what we're talking about?
No,
No, what are we talking about?
on the tower.
You're talking about the
Oh, on the cylinder thing, or
Yeah.
the tank?
tanks.
Okay, all right. But neon's already approved?
No.
Not approved?
No,
Okay. Go ahead.
I think what happened was the actual 4 raceway letter sets were approved, but what happened was the building owner actually put 3 Water Street Brewery logos on the water silo, and it was only spec'd for 2. So that kind of threw a curveball into the mix.
Got it. Okay. Commissioner Dickman?
I don't even know if we had approved the two, maybe it was wrong, but
Yeah, I can provide some clarity on that. The original plan showed one logo on the tank, and the Water Street Brewery Raceway sign that's on the north elevation, that was the one that was discovered was not allowed by the PUD because it is not an entry facade. So that's why there's a request for a variance for basically the north facade.
Okay.
well, let me just, very quickly, it's a variance, the three signs that are on the water tank, or on the tank, I should say, and normally you get a variance, and I think you explained it, Doug, normally you get a variance before something occurs, but I think you explained why they occurred after the fact. So I'm not against it at all, but I'm just pointing it out.
Okay. Commissioner Chandler?
For the additional signs, are there existing signs on the building that are on the same side as the water tank?
The one that's before you right now will be on the same side as the water tank. So this is the north elevation, and the three logos will be seen from the north and the east and west on the tank.
So on the north side, that's the only side that there
That you'll be
is a sign on the building as well?
This is the only side that you're reviewing tonight because all the other signs on all the other sides of the building have been approved.
Well, let me clarify. I'm trying to determine if there are two signs on the same side that are saying the same thing. So is there one on the tank and the building?
There are three on the tank that are a round logo. There is one raceway that says Water Street Brewery in neon on the same north elevation.
And for the other sides of the tank, are there signs on the building on those sides?
Yes, there will be a sign, a raceway sign on all four sides of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Krill?
Where are we at on combined total square footage of signage compared to
What's allowed?
what's allowed? I mean, there's a lot of sign. There's no doubt it's Water Street Brewery when you go by, which is great. But where are we at?
Testing, there we go. When you say total square footage, you just want the signs are, the neon sign is 44.7 square feet in area on the north, the neon sign. And then the logos are 30.2 logo signs on the northeast wall. So if you're looking to add, that's 90 plus the 120 square feet on that one elevation. But it's really a little bit deceptive because the logos on the water tower are facing east, one facing west, one facing north. So if you're looking at the north elevation, it's just the 30 plus the 44 for a total of 77.9 square feet facing the north elevation.
Aren't we or isn't 100 our
100 is your typical wall
target
sign.
wall sign? Thank you.
Alderman Guzikowski?
Yeah, I was going along the same lines. I guess the only other questions, it's going to work for both of these, but are we setting a precedence in terms of other properties that may come in that they're going to look for variances that we're going to have to look at granting?
Well, one of the things that are unique about this situation, it's a four-sided architecture building, where if you look at a lot of other buildings, there's usually one side, maybe two at most. So that's something, unique about these type of structures in this case. And you'll notice the same type of situation with Chick-fil-A is that it's a four-sided architecture building.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Does the fact that it's fronts on two streets, does that play into the variance request ask? I mean, it's kind of a unique situation, right?
Well, I think by its very nature, what we've asked for from our developers and owners in Drexel Town Square is to provide that four-sided architecture, that prominent architecture, and to a certain extent, some of the signage, and you can certainly make up your own minds as to the extent of it. But I would submit to you that a certain amount of the signage is part of the architecture of the building, and it really isn't designed for the sole purpose of advertising. So both in the case of Water Street Brewery, I think that the tank signage certainly becomes an architectural aspect of the building, as opposed to merely just another opportunity to, to do another 100-foot wall sign. I would think that it's integral to the architecture of the building, much like when you go to the next item, as you had discussed earlier, that the wall sign on the south side of Chick-fil-A adds to the architecture of the building, and it was actually encouraged as during the review of the site and building plans.
Yeah, encourage isn't the right word, but I think there's some leeway that we should grant here based on where that building is. I think the character and the style and architecture of that building is unique. I think all of this signage adds to the appeal and the look of that building. And I think having spent a couple hours out there 2 weeks ago, I'm very impressed with how it looks both inside and out. I think this is going to be a landmark building in the city. Even the fact that they took a design modeled after an old industrial building and have taken that through every level of this design and construction is amazing. People won't believe how cool it looks on the inside. So I'm inclined to give a lot of leeway to this request. Mr. Seibert.
Is there going to be any connection with a ground sign in the entrance of Drexel Town Square? You know, we're going to have two signs, I think, on the two entrances. Are they going to have anything with?
Do you recall, do you have a panel on the development entrance signs? I'm not sure what your arrangement with, are you here yet? I mean, as you recall, the development signs, the larger ones at the entrances, does have spaces for individual parcel tenants. I do not know what Water Street's arrangement has been with the.
Does the applicant know that?
I was not aware of any road signs.
It's just curious.
It's possible that they'd be on one of the panels. They would not have their own, though.
Are you talking about the sign that's currently up that has Meyer on it? or
Yes.
no? Yeah, the first one on Drexel?
Yep.
Do you know, Brian?
I think there's a description on what they're asking for. I think Fred's asking if there's a monument sign on that wall as well.
Oh, a separate monument sign? No.
There's no monument signs on this site. I do not know for certain if they're going on the big tower signs where
No,
Myers
that's,
are located.
yeah, that's really what I was,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Commissioner Chandler?
Are there any restrictions with color? Because I noticed the neon sign is red, and I know in the past, we leaned against red neon signs.
Well, we typically, when color becomes an issue, it's on message boards.
Okay.
And typically, we don't regulate the color on static signs.
Okay. And my next question, in regards to the other companies that are in the area, what additional variances did we give them for signs?
Not right there.
The two applications before the Plan Commission tonight are the first variances for Drexel Town Square,
We
or
didn't
in
have
terms
one
of
for
signage.
Meyer?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Seeing none, need a motion on 4, or actually not 4,
6A.
6A.
The deputy makes a motion that the Plan Commission grant a variance allowing 3 30.2 square foot logo signs on the north, east, and west elevations of the water tower located above the building, and 1 44.7 square foot wall sign on the north elevation of the building, which is located at 140 West Town Square Way.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Tweedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
For all aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
Good luck.
Great, thank you very much.
Welcome. All right, then we're going to move to 6B, which is the sign appeal request for the property at 150 West Town Square Way, directly next door, submitted by Jason Hill, Chick-fil-A Inc., that would allow the applicant to erect a wall sign in the west elevation and a wall sign in the south elevation of the building, tax key number as listed. Pete, Gary?
All right, as I described in the public hearing notice, the applicant is looking for 2 additional wall signs, one on the west elevation, one on the south elevation. They will be 58.75 square feet channel letter signs, as illustrated in the rendering the applicant handed out earlier this evening. They are in the same style and size as the proposed wall signs, that actually the approved wall signs that were done earlier this year by the Plan Commission. If the commission is comfortable granting this variance, the Plan Commission can make a motion to grant the variance allowing a 58.75 square foot wall sign on both the west and south elevation of the building located at 150 West Town Square Way.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Chandler?
Can you just go through the details of which sides these two additional signs?
Up on the screen, you'll see the Chick-fil-A sign. They are the exact same style and size on all 4 elevations. As the applicants spoke in the public hearing, they are looking to have additional signage since they have a 4-sided architecture, looking to have visibility from all 4 sides of the building.
And for this applicant, is there another vendor or company that's right next to them that may block those sides?
At this time, to the west, there is not a building there being proposed, but there is the Water Street Brewery to the east, and then there's West Town Squareway to the south. So you'd be driving through, the town, the in-road inside between Meyer and Chick-fil-A. So if you're going the inner route, you would see Chick-fil-A from the south.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Guzikowski?
I just wanted to bring up at the last meeting, we had discussed the fact that this would be a good recommendation in addition, just for the fact that it would help offset and make it look like not the back of a building, so.
I remember that conversation. Commissioner Carrillo?
And this one, this building has a monument sign as well?
It does have one along Drexel Avenue. I believe during the site plan review, there was also proposed one on the south side in the bioswale. And in lieu of, building one there, they would put a wall sign on the south side instead to get that visibility from the interior side of the development.
Okay, so the 4 sides as well as a monument? And then probably the entrance?
And the ones that were approved were the monument sign along Drexel,
Okay.
the one on the north side, and then the one on the east side. Tonight, they're requesting additional signs on the west elevation and the south elevation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
I was just going to say that the monument sign in the bioswale is not being approved, so they will not have another sign on the south side of the property.
Correct.
You mentioned that at the last meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Just clarify.
Go ahead.
Not being approved by,
Engineering.
okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Crowe?
We basically said the south finishes the building. We've got a monument. The west, I'm not sure because potentially that could be blocked.
Most likely there'd be a building to the
Right,
west.
the visibility wise, I mean, I'm not really sure. The south, I get it, it looks good. We need something as you're looking from the west facing one, I don't know if I get.
Go ahead, Brian.
I believe Myers has a 100-foot vision corridor, so the buildings aren't going to be tied up against there.
Right.
You will still have vision to that west side. More than likely, there'll be a parking lot that'll butt up to the west side of that, so you'll still be able to get vision on there.
Good point.
Same thing that happens on the east side. You got their parking, you have Water Street Brewery's parking, so you have a huge vision corridor to see that sign on the east side of the building.
It's symmetrical if you add it, so.
Good point.
Brian, that was 100 foot, did you say?
Yes,
Thanks.
Any other- Go ahead.
No, I just said minimum of.
minimum of one.
Yeah.
Minimum. And you brought that up at the last meeting.
He's got all the answers.
Any other questions or comments? Motion on 6B.
Oops.
I just, one
Go ahead.
quick question about the monument sign on the south side. Where was that going to be located if we put it there, Brian?
It fell into the bioswale easement, which is why engineering won't allow that in the easement. We can't have that structure sitting inside of our easement for the bioswale.
Okay,
So it's out.
all right.
Need a motion.
Come on, somebody.
Correll moves that, these are all more difficult. Correll moves that we approve the additional wall signs on south and west elevations for the 150 West Town Squareway Chick-fil-A.
Guzikowski, second.
Roll call.
Dick and I.
Johnston, aye.
Carrillo, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Correll, aye.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, no.
Good luck. All right, moving back to 5A, it's a preliminary plat review submitted by Timothy Wallen, Oak Creek Land Investment LLC, for the proposed Willowstone subdivision located on portions of the properties at 3110, 3260, and 3300 East Elm Road. Tax key numbers as listed. As you can recall, as you may recall, this was on a previous Plan Commission agenda, I believe was the last one. And we've brought in Deputy City Attorney Melissa Carl, soon to be City Attorney Melissa Carl, to render an opinion on what happened last week and kind of point us in the right direction.
Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I think you all received a copy of the memo that I put together, so I will just summarize that, and in terms of providing some background, procedural history, and the law, and why this is back on the agenda for tonight. It's my understanding this was on the last agenda for May 26, 2015, identical to tonight. It was before the Plan Commission on review of a preliminary plat. Ultimately, after my understanding, some extensive comment in reviewing the minutes, I was not present, but as to that limited review, a number of citizens spoke regarding this proposal. Certainly, there was some discussion among the members of the commission, and ultimately, a motion for approval of the preliminary plat was made, seconded, and there was a tie vote. So the reason our office was consulted and asked to look at the situation is essentially what is the effect of that tie vote. So there's a couple of questions. First, on a tie vote, that motion to approve was lost. So what does that mean? The effect is that the motion failed, but then what does that mean procedurally? So the question is a motion to approve a preliminary plat that failed, is that a denial of the application? And in the memo, I cited a League of Wisconsin Municipalities opinion that says no. And in fact, the language is that the ultimate effect of the vote is that the commission is unable to recommend, in that situation, to its village board, that the petition was either granted or denied because the result of the tie vote is that the commission had, in effect, taken no position on the matter before it. So in fact, where this commission, the Plan Commission, stands is that essentially there's no position taken on that limited issue. So the next question procedurally then is whether a motion to approve that has failed can be renewed at the next meeting. And in fact, again, citing the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, a legal opinion, yes, in fact, it can. That's why it's back on this agenda. So in general, a motion may not be made a second time in essentially the same form during the same session, except through a motion to reconsider or a motion to rescind. However, a motion may be renewed by any member at any subsequent session. That's where we are now. So I've included some additional law in that memorandum opinion as to what the Plan Commission has before it in terms of its many responsibilities, in terms of what you have to do in terms of decisions. But as it relates to this approval, the question before it is the approval of a preliminary plat. The law is very limited. In terms of Wisconsin statute and then by adoption in our municipal code, the legal standards are set forth essentially to say that unless there is some reason that this plat is not in compliance with either statute, local ordinance, the comprehensive plan, or some other law, the Plan Commission must approve the preliminary plat. So I'm here to give you that guidance and explain to you that essentially, as it relates to a preliminary plat or a final plat, but tonight it's for a preliminary plat, the Plan Commission's role is very limited. It's approve or deny, and if it is a denial, there needs to be specific reasons with specific citations to where this plat does not comply with law. So, I'll just last cite to you what I had in this opinion. There's a Court of Appeals case that says, we hold that local units of government have no discretion to reject proposed plats under section 236.13 of the Wisconsin statutes, unless the plat conflicts with an existing statutory requirement of chapter 236 or with an existing written ordinance, master plan, official map, or rule as provided by section 236.131A through E of the statutes. So where that leaves you now, just to reiterate, is that the Plan Commission needs to take action. So the motion can be renewed by any member of the Plan Commission. From a legal perspective, I am reiterating the fact that this is a ministerial act. It's my understanding from reviewing the report from staff that this preliminary plat does comply with state and local law. So based upon that, it's my understanding that what Plan Commission has before it would need to be an approval unless there are specific articulated reasons based in law for the denial. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Does anyone on the commission have any? Commissioner Curl?
Question?
Yep.
Who made the original motion? If I guess I could have dug it out of the minutes. Carrie, do you? Dan?
I think he did.
Alderman Bekavich?
And that's what I thought. So my question was, the original person who made the motion, it doesn't matter. Anyone can renew that
You are
motion?
correct. It does not matter. Anyone can make the motion.
And who seconded that motion?
Not me.
We were missing one, weren't we?
No.
We were all here?
Oh, I recused
Oh, you, right. Gotcha.
That's what you're,
Oh, I did.
that was- oh, no wonder you brought it up.
No wonder you couldn't remember that.
Thank you.
Alderman Guzikowski.
Can I ask, would it be appropriate if we were able to go back and just explain and review quickly what is on the table so everyone clearly understands one more time? Would that be asking too much?
Yes.
Yes, it would be.
Or I think to be concise, Mayor, the question was the cul-de-sac versus the, we threw some other options out there, and I think the question was what's really,
What is the applicant asking for? When the applicant's here? Briefly.
Right.
Joe Bukovic, 13400 Bishop's Lane, Brookfield. We were asking for approval of the preliminary plat with a temporary cul-de-sac as submitted to the city.
Okay. Commissioner Dickman?
In just looking at what we covered at the last meeting, and I voted against it, some of my concerns, though, were not statutory, if it's in nature, because it does fit the comprehensive plan. But I just feel that there is no way that we could write all the laws to cover every situation that occurs here in the city. And so that puts us, I think, at a very odd position, because I have to agree it does flow with the comprehensive plan, but yet the things I think that why I voted no are things that aren't by law written down by law. And so you're telling me if it's not written down or one of our laws, then we have no choice but to vote for it. Is that what you're saying?
In a nutshell, yes. I mean, that's a tough role for me to come in here and say that. I mean, I know that there have been a lot of comments, extensive comments at the last hearing from interested citizens. And in deference to those citizens, they certainly expressed a number of concerns in terms of what's before the Plan Commission. So you're right, Commissioner. When you ask the question, I mean, we can't, in this limited situation for what's before you on this issue, unfortunately, we can't be guided by we can only be guided by what the law is. So emotions and what are other important concerns, I certainly understand and can appreciate that, but there's a lot of situations where, yes, absolutely, reading through the minutes, there are concerns that are expressed, but not based upon, in terms of a denial, if there were those reasons, they would need to be based on some non-compliance with law.
Right.
Okay.
Are you done, Commissioner Dickman?
Yes, I guess I am.
I mean, I've sat up here as an alderman and a mayor for 6 or 7 years, and I've faced the same decision. I've actually done that. I've voted on passion because I was, I could cite a bunch of examples. But then at some point, you're faced with the reality of this is what it says, what the law says. And you have to, as a body, whether it's this body or the Common Council, if you have to revisit it to correct that action based on passion or whatever reason you use to justify your vote, you have to do that. Otherwise, you subject yourself to a lot of other situations that are not desirable. So I guess that's the way I would frame it. We have to do what we're supposed to do, given the laws that we're handed. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. Alderman Guzikowski.
Just to go back to, so this is not going to be a cul-de-sac here. This is going to be just a, what do you call it, stubbed out road? Or temporary road for additional?
Temporary cul-de-sac into the lands to the east, develop, and then it'll be gated off.
Okay, so, okay, then it would be gated off at the subdivision at Justin, okay.
Correct.
If I may caution the commission, there is nothing within the commission's discretion at this point with the preliminary plat which allows them to stipulate that a gate be present there.
Understood.
That's where I was going.
Commissioner Chandler.
Can you provide more information on the 4 items you said that we need to meet or there need to be a legal issues against? And I know you noted them in the item we received, but can you give clarity to each one, starting with the statutory provisions on down, what that means?
Well, any statutory provision, anything in Wisconsin statute, any local ordinance, anything essentially as it relates to preliminary plats and final plats. Chapter 236 of the Wisconsin statutes generally addresses plats. There are other references. Certainly in our municipal code, Chapter 14 addresses plats. There are certainly other references. Chapter 17, potentially as far as the comprehensive plan. And then as far as the installation of the public improvements, I would say those are the general references, Commissioner, in terms of the law.
Well, what I'm trying to understand is several of the items, they are pretty clear. If it's not according to the laws, we should vote against that. If it's not according to the comprehensive plan that's in place, we should vote against that. But the other items like installation of required public improvements, what does that mean exactly?
Well, I would leave it to staff to correct me, but this is a preliminary plat. I mean, that could be part of the final plat. So I would defer to that piece as it relates to largely a final plat.
So if we're under the impression that it's not a public improvement, we can vote against that. That was my interpretation. I want to make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly.
Not necessarily.
I'm not understanding that totally. I mean, when you're talking about public improvements, the cities, whether it be the engineering design manual, which is codified under Chapter 6, establishes standards for the design of streets and other public infrastructure for subdivision plats or land divisions within, and it can vary by zoning district. That, I believe the reference to Chapter 6 this evening assumes that whatever preliminary plat is presented, regardless of the orientation of the streets or what have you, that the lots and the public improvements conform to the standards established by Chapter 6 in the engineering design manual. And it's my understanding that, yes, at this point they do.
Yes.
Well, and I guess this is where I'm unclear, because what I heard at our last meeting from the neighbors that are in that area, this is not an improvement for their area, for some. Let's just say that. I
And maybe to clarify, improvement doesn't mean, it's not a subjective term that it's better. Improvement means a physical feature such as a street, sidewalk, water main, sewer main. So it's not making any value judgments as to whether or not it's better or worse for any particular situation. It's specifically referring to a physical improvement.
But what does that mean? I guess that's my challenge here, because I still don't hear from the description of what's going in versus what's there already, the improvement without some changes based on the neighbor's feedback. So I'm just trying to understand.
Doesn't it mean
clarity.
streets and gutters and sewer and stormwater, all of that?
Brian, you can chime in whenever you want.
It's the public infrastructure that they're talking about, so, yeah, that's the roads, the sewer, the water that's going in.
Yeah, I would caution, I understand what you're saying, but if you subject every development to that kind of scrutiny, we would get nothing done.
And the reason I asked that, I know there were issues with flooding and all of that. So would that be addressed? So I'm just trying to, from a legal perspective, making sure that the reason I voted no does comply, or there are some issues that are obvious. And that's what I see from public improvements. That's just my opinion. That's why I wanted clarity, because maybe my interpretation is not the actual meaning behind what this is.
Any development would have to meet the MMSD stormwater requirements. So the public infrastructure for that would be approved by the city, by MMSD, for that installation to go in, way after this preliminary plat is approved.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Correll?
Two questions. We got so far into at last discussion, gates and different things and what could happen. All that is really immaterial. We're just looking at this plat. So that discussion being left out, the opportunity, as I see it, explained by Attorney Carls, is there really isn't much of an option. This meets the legal requirements, and if we see it that way, that's where we're somewhat forced to vote.
Yes.
And
I mean, in a nutshell,
and it's
yes.
a pretty short answer. I mean, but my question is, the opportunity, so once this was rezoned in November, that's where we had more leeway? I mean, this is just a plat law.
Exactly it.
So in November, the rezone was really potentially where that could have been.
And let me further clarify that. Your obligation as a city under state statute is to make zoning decisions which are consistent with your comprehensive plan, which that, when you decided that, and for whatever reason that this was appropriate for single-family residential development on the comprehensive plan, to, at that point during the rezoning, to say that, we weren't going to rezone that property would have presented its own legal challenges.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, without revisiting that, Doug, thank you, I appreciate that, but my question was, this plat law was different than the zoning law or variance, whatever at that point. So once it was rezoned, plat law took over, and that's our option.
I think you encapsulated perfectly, to the extent that the rezone has more discretion. That's done. The plat is a ministerial act.
Not so much.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dickman?
We've got the preliminary plat in front of us, that's what we're discussing, but how about when it becomes the final version or the final plat? Because there are changes always made. Are we under the same obligation? And if we are, then I don't know what I'm doing up here, I guess. It's pretty easy to just take it,
You're under the same obligation. I think, as Commissioner Chandler pointed out, though, and with the exchange with Commissioner Johnston, certainly the installation of required public improvements, there's a ways to go, I guess, suffice it to say. So your role is extremely important, Commissioner Dickman, and I say that sincerely. I think that it's difficult to come before the Plan Commission and say, these are some decisions you have to make. In terms of, I would, I guess, frame it as a limited decision. Because this is just that ministerial act versus, as Commissioner Correll pointed out, the rezone has more discretion. But I would submit that you do have a good deal of other decisions to make as it relates to this plat going forward.
It also allows, if it does go through, it allows the applicant to work with our staff to create a new development that actually meets the needs and challenges of not only the new development, but the neighborhood that it associates or is next to. So that's where the process moves to.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that it stops and then just goes forward. There's other discussions that need to take place. Whether they're here or they're with staff, they still take place.
Okay.
I'm going to allow a really brief comment strictly to the discussion tonight, because we heard everyone speak last week on the broader neighborhood. We all understand what those concerns are. And so if you have a specific comment related to tonight's agenda item, I'll allow it. Name and address for the record.
Doug Kermer, 3170 East Lindy Lane. Actually, there's going to be two comments, Mayor, if that's okay.
Sure.
Number one, as Mr. Dickman said, he wonders whether he should be here due to your legal assessment, but I'm wondering what the audience should be here and why there's public comments at all, if anything that we say.
Just so you're clear, I don't have to allow public comments, but I'm doing it.
I understand, and I do appreciate that, sir.
Okay.
So I just don't understand where the public stands in this process when this is our avenue. And the second comment is that when we did come through rezoning, we were told, and I would like to ask that the meeting minutes from it was the Tuesday of Thanksgiving, where we were told specifically that these type of issues would be resolved at the preliminary plat. We were told that by city staff. Mr. Correll, you weren't here at the time?
That's why I asked.
And that's why you were asking. That was a great question. So we were told at that time that the preliminary was the time we would be able to do that. Our neighborhood has tried to act in good faith. We've never said we did not want this property to be developed for residential. We've only asked that we would have a voice to try and impact. And even though something's within the law, you could have many solutions that are still within the law. And I believe these are the times where you should be talking, compromising, and giving positions so that we work things together. The comprehensive plan talks about having parks in neighborhoods and connecting to schools and that. This plat does not have that. So it doesn't really technically adhere to the comprehensive plan. So there are things that don't technically meet the law with this plan. But that's not something that we brought up. But since we're getting technical now, then technically this does not meet the comprehensive plan.
Thanks for your comments. As I said to Commissioner Dickman, the process does not stop tonight. There are things that we're required to do by state statutes or local codes and ordinances that we have to do. So just coming up to the microphone doesn't end the conversation between residents and public officials or members of commissions or committees. All of our phone numbers are accessible. Our emails are accessible. You can walk in here and schedule an appointment or stop in and talk to city staff at any time about any of these issues. This is not the only forum where that has to happen. I understand the frustration. Lived through it for 8 years. I understand when new things happen, people get frustrated, they get angry about it. That's the reality of life in cities and villages and towns. Change is tough. We will be sensitive as staff, as electeds, as committee and commission members to the needs of the neighborhood. Why would we not be sensitive to that? That's an existing neighborhood with how many households in it? Almost 100 homes. Why would we not be sensitive to that? We have to listen to the residents, but we also have to do what we're up here to do, and the state tells us what we have to do. So that's my point. So it doesn't stop here. It moves forward. Engage our staff, engage our electeds, engage the commission members with what you have to say, and they'll take that information and be able to work with the developer to make these things look the right way and work for both the existing homes and the new homes. That's what I would tell you. I appreciate your comments, though. Alderman Guzikowski.
Has Alderman Toman been part of this dialogue or conversation?
I cannot speak for Alderman Toman, but I'm sure he's aware of it. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
Our hands are tied.
I need a motion on 5A. Who has a question? Commissioner Siebert. Good. Go ahead.
The concern I have is actually the access to the plot. I think the people would be more for it if you had an access to Elm Road, from Elm Road. He has to develop a road to get in there with this heavy equipment to develop that. He can't come through the subdivision with his equipment to do that plot. So why not develop a road and make it access off of Elm? That would take off some of the pressure going into the subdivision, and I think that would help satisfy the people in that subdivision.
Any other comments? Motion on 5A.
Correll moves that the commission approves the preliminary plat for the Willowstone subdivision submitted by Timothy Wallen, Oak Creek Land Investment LLC for portions of the property at 3110, 3260, and 3300 East Elm Road, with the condition that all staff and utility comments are incorporated as required.
Johnston seconds.
Roll call.
I guess I will have to vote yes to the conditions of the law that we're working under. So it's a yes.
Johnston, aye.
Corello abstains.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, yes.
Correll, yes.
Seibert, aye.
Chandler, no.
For the staff or the legal counsel, do we need a justification on the no vote, or can she provide that? And
No,
no? Okay.
do not.
Thank you. 5A passes. Thanks to the audience members. Don't stop communicating.
Mayor, just a question.
Go ahead.
So we only have to provide that if it would have been denied collectively.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
All right. So we're at 6C, which is a review of conditions and restrictions for automobile and truck engine and body repair and storage of vehicles and equipment, submitted by Mike Arioldi, Arioldi Brothers LLC, on a portion of the property at 7350 South 10th Street, tax key number as listed. Carrie. Thank you to the Deputy City Attorney as well.
At the last meeting on May 26th, the commission recommended approval of a conditional use for the proposed auto and truck engine and body repair and outdoor storage of vehicles and equipment at this property. And what is on the screen before you is the site plan, and I will zoom into the specific area where the proposal, where the proposed use will occur, which is actually in this existing building and also on the surrounding parking areas here. What I want to draw the commission's attention to are specific sections of the proposed conditions and restrictions. So if you turn to page 2 and you look at section 3D, this was a discussion item for the commission regarding the off-street parking area requirement to be paved. I did not incorporate anything other than what is in the code right now. It is up for the Plan Commission to decide whether or not to require that. Moving on to 3I, adjustments to require parking may be made by the Plan Commission. This is one of those items that is going to be in all conditions and restrictions, just as a clarification matter. And that's just for consistency with other conditions and restrictions. If you turn to page 4 under 5L, that's the same code language that is for consistency purposes, for clarification regarding Plan Commission authority. On page 5 of 7, under 7, those are building and parking setbacks. The proposal does meet the parking setbacks, just as an aside. And then on page 6, under 10B, what the permitted use is: 1, automobile and truck engine and body repair business with outdoor storage of vehicles and equipment. Outdoor storage of vehicles and equipment is limited to marked and designated areas on the existing paved areas of a lot. Again, this is related to the paving requirement mentioned earlier, as depicted on the site plan, and only those which are being actively worked on in the facility. No vehicle or piece of equipment shall be stored outdoors on the site for more than 14 days. And then under 11, it's the standard time of compliance. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit, allowing automobile and truck engine and body repair and storage of vehicles and equipment on portions of the property located at 7350 South 10th Street after a public hearing. Mr. Mayor.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Dickman?
I guess, Kerry, I need a little more clarification. On page 4, item 5L, it says we may modify any of the above standards. When you say above standards, is that just the ones that are in section 5, or does that apply to all of them?
Just section 5.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Siebert?
Yeah, I have a question about how do we verify the 14 days that they have, they cannot be parked? How do we check that, or who checks that and follows up in section 10?
Thank you. In order to verify that, it's a case where something is observed, and if we observe what we believe to be a violation of that, we would document when we first saw the vehicle, and we would just keep a visual inspection on the property. And I mean, in cases, it would be likely that, you know, should the event arise, that they'd probably be there longer than 14 days. But we would just need to document at which time we first observed the vehicle there, and we would start the clock at that point.
Thank you.
Who is we?
That's the code enforcement officer.
Okay, that's what I know. Pete.
Pete Wagner.
Sorry, zoning administrator.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Crowe?
And maybe I missed it. The previous discussion was asphalt on the parking of the vehicle parking at the, they requested to leave it gravel. What are we saying here? It says a proposal to use other materials, it's asphalted according to this, unless they propose differently?
What this is strictly from the code. This is directly verbatim. What they're requesting is the second portion, which is they are proposing to use other materials. In other words, gravel instead of asphalt or concrete.
So we're considering it, we're voting on right now to allow them to do that?
That would be correct.
Positioned, okay.
And
Thank you.
that was a staff recommendation to allow that.
No, the staff recommendation is for paving as required by code.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Someone want to make a motion?
Dickman makes a motion, the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit allowing automobile and truck engine and body repair and storage of vehicles and equipment on a portion of their property at 7350 South 10th Street after a public hearing.
Guzekowski, will second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Reedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Well, no.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, moving to 6D is a plan review for site building and landscaping plan submitted by Midwest Twisters for a proposed addition to the existing building on the property at 600 East Rawson Avenue. Tax key number is listed. Carrie?
Okay, so this is a request for an addition to the north side of the existing building. This is a location map showing where the property is located. Just to orient you, this is Howell Avenue and this is Rawson Avenue. The property we are discussing is right here, the existing location of Midwest Twisters. Site plan shows the existing conditions and the proposed addition. This is the existing building. The addition would be located north. It does meet all setbacks. In discussions with the owner's representative, it's been determined that there would be adequate parking based on the code. They have about 47, 48 patrons, and that's how the parking requirements are listed in the code. So there is adequate parking with the addition. There is, however, one area that the applicant has been made aware of, and that is that there are currently storage containers in the proposed location of the addition, and those must be removed. There is no storage of materials or equipment allowed on the parcel. Moving on to the addition, this is going to match what is already there in terms of building materials, colors, patterns. There is one area that the Plan Commission would have to make a ruling on. There is an existing metal panel on the north elevation. They're proposing to maintain that material on the north elevation with the addition. Otherwise, there's going to be mainly CMU and CMU accent bands, again, matching the existing building. The metal wall panels are not going to be seen from the road, so it doesn't really have anything to do with visible perimeter. It's not clear from these plans whether or not there are any mechanicals. However, I will note that all mechanical equipment would have to be screened, whether they be on the ground or if they are actually attached to the building. Those details, if they would be using vegetative screening, would be included in landscaping plans that would be submitted for Department of Community Development review prior to issuance of building permits. Grading plan that was submitted to the engineering department shows a sidewalk to the door, which was missing in the plans that were in your packets. That was found to be acceptable, but final grading plans will be required as part of the building permit process. Staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans submitted by Midwest Twisters for the property at 600 East Rawson Avenue, subject to conditions 1 through 5. Mr. Mayor.
Is the applicant here? Oh, okay. Any questions for the applicant or general questions? Commissioner Chandler?
I just want to get more information on the reason for the addition.
We just want to expand. We're not going to add any more kids, but we need more space for them.
Could you provide your name and address for the record?
Yes, Rick Nelson from Muskego.
Good, thank you. Any other questions?
And with the expansion, does that affect fire any? Do we need more sprinklers?
As with similar projects, we'll work with the applicant to ensure that the fire codes are met and discuss access and hydrant placement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnston?
Just questioning the metal on the north end. I'm assuming that was put in there originally for future expansions of the building. This building will not be able to expand to the north any further because it's up to the building setback. Why would we leave the metal panels on that north face now?
Cost.
Honest answer. Appreciated. Other questions? Commissioner Chandler?
Can you provide more information about the location of the mechanicals?
Gary Etzel, Delafield. Yes, those mechanicals would be on the, let's see, the east elevation. There were mechanicals there prior to this, and they will be screened accordingly.
Okay.
As far as the back panel is concerned, if you drive, if you notice that location, that back panel is directly away, across from that trucking firm. That's to the north of that. So it's really not visible from it from any other visual point.
Commissioner Dickman?
It was noted that there was some storage of material outside or some kind of small buildings. With this addition, if it's not allowed, will this adequately take care of the needs that you have?
It was gymnastics equipment that I was storing for this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Motion on 6D.
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission approve the site and building plan submitted by Midwest Twisters for the property at 600 East Rawson Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all building and fire codes are met. 2, there shall be no outdoor storage of materials or equipment. 3, that all mechanical equipment is screened from view. 4, that revised landscaping plans are submitted for review and approved by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. 5, that the stormwater and grading plans are submitted for final approval by the Engineering Department prior to issuing of permits.
Guzikowski, second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzikowski.
Corral, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, go forward. Moving to 6E, Plan review, site building and landscaping plan submitted by PPG for a proposed addition to the existing building on the property at 10800 South 13th Street, tax key number as listed. Carrie?
The request is for a 3,347 square foot addition on the northwest side of the existing building. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the property, this is actually 13th Street, and this is just about at the city limits. An aerial showing you exactly where this proposal is. Again, this is 13th right here. The proposed location of the addition is right here. It meets all setback requirements. No additional parking is required. They are anticipating about 3 to 4 employees with this addition. It's essentially expanding their existing lab facility there. It will be a 2-story addition, but that's to match the building, really. These are the color elevations, again, matching the existing building. Brick veneer, exposed aggregate fascia accenting the roof. There will be landscaping adjacent to the new portion of the building. Basically, they're relocating what's there already. The addition will likely not be seen from 13th Street due to its location. The Plan Commission, the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by PPG for the property at 10800 South 13th Street, subject to conditions 1 and 2. Mr. Mayor.
Questions on item 6E? Is that E? Yeah. I gotta stop scribbling on my paper. I can't read my letters and numerals. Any questions? All right, motion.
Guzekowski makes the motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by PPG for the property at 10800 South 13th Street with the following conditions. 1, that all building and fire codes are met. 2, that final lighting plans are submitted for final approval for the electrical inspector prior to issuance of building permits.
Seipert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
BDI.
Guzekowski, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Good luck, gentlemen. Moving to the last regular agenda item, plan review of site and landscaping plan submitted by R.J. Bass, Go Right Way, for a proposed expansion of the parking area on the properties at 7433 South 10th Street, 7480 and 7460 South 13th Street, tax key numbers as listed. Carrie.
Okay, just to give a little bit of a clarification, these are the affected properties. They are all listed here because there has been a CSM that was submitted and approved that combined all of these properties. That CSM has not yet been recorded, so all the properties are listed separately. However, really the ones that are affected by the proposal are these 3 properties here. So just to clarify.
Can you highlight those again quickly?
Sure.
The 3.
It just crosses over to this property here,
Yep.
this existing property here, and there's a tiny little piece
Okay.
right here.
Thank you.
Oh, that doesn't show up very well at all. Okay, I apologize for the quality, but essentially what they are proposing is phase 1 of their master plan to expand the parking area. Let's see if I can make it a little bit better. We'll just focus on it in portions here. So if we look at the western side, what's existing is there's parking that is in this area. We'll just talk about this side for right now. And they're proposing to expand this highlighted area with an extension out to the road here, 13th, and also expansion along the southern boundary line here. On the south, they are also proposing a chain link fence and retaining wall. You'll note that the parking is right up to the property line just about. The current conditional use permit requires a 22-foot side setback for parking, so there's 2 options, and the applicant has been made aware of this. They can either revise the plans so that it meets that requirement, or they can request an amendment to the conditional use permit. My understanding is that they are going to be pursuing a change to the conditional use permit. So if we go over to, sorry, it's jumping around on me. If we go over to the other half, which is along 10th Street, just to show you the existing here, really there's nothing that'll be happening on this side, but just to make everybody aware that the existing parking underneath the canopy or the solar panels on that side are pretty much right up to the property line there. Again, there would be cyclone fencing along the proposed expanded portions of the pavement. Cyclone fencing for security purposes are limited to a height of 10 feet, and the Plan Commission has the authority to determine the opacity for such. Now, if we go to the landscaping plan, you'll note that some of the landscaping that was discussed with the overall master plan is incorporated in terms of having a berm. However, considering the overall master plan, the landscaping really should be more in line with the overall use of the property. In other words, landscaping should really be expanded such that it provides more of an emphasis with the development up to 13th Street. So you'll recall from the previous discussions on this property that there are residences on the west side of the road, and the landscaping would be provided to make sure that the buses are screened adequately. And also a vegetative buffer is required along the entire length of 13th Street. It isn't clear from these plans whether or not the existing landscaping that is currently blocking the stormwater pond would remain. However, staff would say wherever possible that vegetation should be maintained. The recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the site and landscaping plans submitted by R.J. Basco Rightway for the properties at 7433 South 10th Street, 7480, and 7460 South 13th Street, subject to conditions 1 through 4. Mr. Mayor.
Questions on 6F? Commissioner Chandler.
There were some comments about the landscaping, that more information, more details needed to be provided. In regards to what exactly? This is the last paragraph of this item.
What those comments are saying is basically the landscaping that they've proposed really doesn't address the entirety of the property. So perhaps if I bring up the master plan again, you can have an idea of what they are proposing. Again, this is kind of a phase 1, if you will. So really, landscaping should be coordinated with the master plan. Shouldn't just kind of end here. It should really be integrated with this master plan. Again, this is the buffer area along the west side of the property. It really should also be enhanced so that whenever this plan moves forward with expansion to the north, that landscape buffer can continue rather than having something that looks choppy, piecemeal, or may not be adequate once that plan goes forward.
Okay. And so the applicant is aware of this and they're okay with that? Is the applicant here? Oh.
Prior to that, just an explanation on the landscape comment. You'll notice that a good deal of the landscaping that's being proposed falls within the areas that will be developed in the future. Staff felt that investment would be better utilized towards something which will provide an ultimate landscape solution along 13th Street that also allows that landscaping the opportunity to grow in and mature before the remainder of the property is developed.
I guess for the applicant, there's an understanding that, or expectation that what that means is that as we develop west, the stuff you do now is going to actually enhance the look of that area for people driving north and south on 13th Street. It's the back end of your property, but it's the the front side of 13th Street exposure. So we want to make sure that it looks as good as possible. For the short term, it screens for the 5 or 6 residents across the street. Is there more than that? Something like that. Screens as much as possible from looking at buses all day. So I guess that's my expectation.
Okay.
If it's okay, I could hand out.
Did you give your name and address for the record?
I'm sorry. Tim Neprath.
I didn't ask.
Tim Neprath. I work with MSI General in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. I'm here as an agent for Right Way Bus, and owner RJ Bass is with me as well for any specific questions. If it's okay, I did have a rendering prepared of what that entrance would look like.
It is okay.
Sorry, Tim, I did have that. It's on the screen.
Oh, there we go.
All right. This is actually a photograph from 13th Street. If you look back here, that's
You can tell it's 13th Street by the roadway in front of it.
yeah, the residents will tell you about that. So what you're seeing right here, actually, Right Way's building on 10th Street is right in the back right there. You can see it better on the handouts we have right there. So this is the actual picture. As you can see, the pond is hidden back in here. We want to keep, as Carrie said, all the vegetation there as possible. Right now, you don't even know the pond's there when you drive by unless you really look. So we're going to keep all that in place. We have a nice little planting in front of the pond, which is right behind there. And then here's the berm. And this berm is set up so it can be expanded to go taller and longer as you go down 13th Street. So right now, we're screening just the portion of the 13th Street property that we're developing, and it will be, able to make larger and continue down 13th Street as the master plan had shown.
Looks good. Commissioner Sieper.
Yeah, I have a question about the approval from Milwaukee County for your driveways onto 13th Street. Have you got that approval from the county?
We verbally discussed it with them. Right now, we just finished the traffic analysis study as required by the Milwaukee County, and we will not pull a permit until we have that, but we should have that in the next week or so. Okay. The traffic study's been completed. Everything's in agreement. We just have to have the application submitted and approved.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dickman.
My question was just answered.
All right. Any other questions or comments on 6F? Commissioner Chandler?
There was also a note that there may be an issue with distance from the property line with parking. Can you provide more information?
Right now, the plan shows the parking right up to the property line. The conditional use permit requires 22 feet as a setback requirement. The applicant is, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, will be pursuing an amendment to the existing conditional use permit to address that.
Yeah, further clarify, after actually moving the buses around on site, we found that that section is not required for phase one. So we like to proceed without that non-compliant asphalt and then come back for the conditional use when we go to phase two of the project. So we will revise our plans and engineering to omit the asphalt along the south lot line.
Thank you. And if I could just interject here, this looks great. I would ask that the landscaping plans include the height of the trees at planting versus at maturity, because I think what we're looking at is maturity.
Okay.
So they're screening right away. I guess that's the goal.
Okay.
Other questions? Commissioner Chandler.
And there was also in our notes questions about the fence that we need to decide if it's see-through or how see-through it should be.
Right. According to the code, the Plan Commission has the authority to determine opacity of security fences.
And can you show us where that fence is?
This is right here.
Oh, that one.
So they currently have, I believe, a 7-foot tall chain link fence with a tannish colored slats in there. So we can plan on doing the same thing for the new fence. The only area that we'd like to discuss with you is that we have a gate proposed to go across there. That gate's 30 feet. A lot of times when you put the slats in there, that become a great big sail. So to have the flexibility for opacity in the gate itself, but the rest of the fence, we'd be matching the existing.
So that gate's closed when you're not...
Closed after 5 o'clock.
So, okay. And where's that gate in proximity to 13th Street? How far set back?
Right here. So the fence is currently right here. We expanded the fence like this, and the fence goes along this side as well. And all those areas will have the slats in it. And the gate just right here, being 30 feet, get the buses in and out. Again, that's just a big gate to have the slats in it, turns into a large sail.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to go with the chain link with the panels, those things really got to be maintained. If that's a 30-foot section of fence that has no screening to 13th Street, those really got to be maintained if they look nice.
The slats or the fence itself?
The slats, the fence, everything has to look like it's essentially in good working order.
There won't be any slats, though.
So there won't be any slats on those gate things?
Not on the 30-foot.
That's what we're asking for your consideration right now. The fence itself, yes. The gate, if we could have less opacity there, it'd be appreciated.
Commissioner Chandler?
Yeah, I just want to know why again? Is it just because of the length?
Yeah, it's a 30-foot single rolling gate that fits in that location right there. So you have 30-foot by 7-foot, very large section. When there's no slats in it, the wind blows directly through the chain link. When you add the slats, it turns into a solid surface.
Got it.
And it can't act again like a big sail.
Commissioner Johnston?
How about a 7-foot wood privacy fence and then the open chain link for a gate?
I think we'd rather stay with what we have. And if we have to put slats in it, we will comply with that. It just was for discussion.
So if it's a 30-foot gate with essentially chain link, right? Okay, so what are they going to see looking straight east?
You can go back to the rendering.
Are they going to see buses?
And yeah.
Well, that's on an angle, so it shows that.
Yeah. So right here is where that gate would be right there.
So they'd be looking at buses?
You'd be able to see down the drive lane to the buses, correct?
Yeah.
I was hoping Brian was going to have an answer how to screen that.
They make gates that function as security gates that are solid. They cost money.
We'll put the slats in if that's what commission would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some way to mediate the wind factor. Maybe you can talk to the manufacturer of those panels or.
Pull them out on windy days and.
No, that's not impossible.
That's a
possible.
true alderman.
But again, with the reminder that, that's going to be 13th Street, what's happening down the road, you got to set a precedence here of.
We just got to be really sensitive to how that looks. And again, it's your back door. Well, I guess it's not your back door anymore. It'd be a front door, but it's a big, wide opening in that property. So think about that as you
do something.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carrie.
Okay.
This is my ignorance, but how tall is a bus?
RJ, 10 feet? Roughly 10 feet.
Are you proposing landscaping, I know it's on the plans, but landscaping higher than the 7-foot security fence?
The trees, of course, will be taller than the 7-foot. And the berm itself is, I think, 5 feet tall. So you have plantings on top of there, the bushes and so forth, the angle that you're seeing.
I'm more thinking coming south to north on 13th Street.
As you go further up 13th Street,
If you're just south of this and you're coming north and you look over to your right, are you going to be able to see buses, or is there enough of the landscaping that you're keeping that'll block the fence?
I think the drive lane's so long you're not going to see the buses. As you start from the south and are heading north, the angle won't allow that to happen.
Okay.
Other questions? If none, motion on 6F.
Dickman makes a motion, the Plan Commission approve the site and landscaping plans submitted by R.J. Bast, go right way for the properties at 7433 is at South 10th Street, I think you added to that. At 7480 and 7460 South 13th Street with the following conditions: that the plans are revised to meet minimum setback requirements per the conditional use permit. And I think you said they may be coming back with a change in that, but we still have to leave it like this?
So I think there should be an or in here, or amend the conditional use permit. They did say that they are going to amend it, but
Okay, we'll add
either that
yeah.
or just some kind of recognition that the southern expansion is not going to occur at this time.
Well, let's just add the or, the conditional use will be updated.
Conditional use amendment.
Conditional use amendment, okay. Number 2, that stormwater and grading plans are submitted for final approval by the engineering department prior to issuance of permits. 3, that the revised landscaping plans are submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits or the commencement of construction. And 4, that the applicant demonstrates approval from Milwaukee County on the driveway access to South 13th Street prior to the commencement of construction.
Before anyone seconds, do we have to put in the fence issue here? Gate, thank you.
The opacity question?
You can add in condition number 5 that the privacy slats be added to all new portions of the proposed fence,
That sounds good.
including the gate.
Okay.
Well, what I heard is we wanted to give them some options, not only the slats, but something.
We're all right with the slats and
Oh,
the gate.
okay.
He'd rather go.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll add that as condition 5 then.
Okay.
Okay.
Crowell seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Grillo, aye.
VDI.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seaper, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, 6G is a plan review for proposed revisions to Town Square and street lighting plans for properties within Drexel Town Square at 171, 320, and 361 West Town Square Way, 7980 South Market Street, 7978-7979 South Main Street, 7901 to 8142 South 6th Street, and 400 West Forest Hill Avenue, multiple tax key numbers. Applicant is here.
Thank you. I don't have the report in front of me, but I can give you the gist of what's occurring. I mean, some time ago, the commission had a review. Actually, in February of 2014, the Plan Commission approved the signage and lighting plans for Drexel Town Square, and you've got a copy of those minutes attached as part of your packet. Now, as part of the development of infrastructure at Drexel Town Square, and this is one of the latter phases of development, the bids for some of the infrastructure work and the streetscape work have been coming in considerably higher than anticipated. And in an effort to, it's called value engineering, to engineer the streetscape plan and the improvements such that we maintain the impact and the aesthetic of what we're going for, but to save money to stay within or stay aligned with our budget, which is an important consideration, not something typically the Plan Commission delves deeply into or should be concerned about, but just as a point of background, certainly with this development, we are sensitive, as with all of our public improvements, to the cost to the taxpayers, to the TIF district in this case. So really what we're looking to do is to find ways to minimize cost for these streetscape improvements, but at the same time to meet the intent, the aesthetic of what the Plan Commission had originally approved back in February of last year. One of the ways that the cost savings were identified is through the use of streetlights. As you recall, the street lighting plan called for the use of two different and pretty distinct types of streetlights. One was the Guardco Pureform, and I see that the PDF kind of cut off some of the text there, but it's over on being highlighted there. It's 25-foot tall. It's similar, actually is the fixture and the pole, albeit a different color and a slightly shorter height than what is in the Meyer parking lot right now. Yes? No? No? Ryan Road, I'm sorry. So it is something that the city is familiar with and really was designed for parking lot lighting or public street lighting. And if you'll go to the next slide, could you please, Carrie? If you can see the areas that are not highlighted, those were the areas that were programmed for the Guardco light, the taller kind of street light, this kind of the standard street light. If you go back one more now. The shorter, what we're calling the cyclone light, was a more pedestrian scale, 14-foot light that was to be used predominantly throughout the pedestrian-oriented areas of Drexel Town Square that are highlighted, and I think they were supposed to be red there. I'm not sure what it came out as on the copy, but you can see it was quite extensive. And I guess just doing the math, you can see how obviously a shorter light needs to be, there needs to be more of them in order to get the same lighting effect. And originally, when the streetscape plan was developed, we thought that the costs would be acceptable and appropriate, given the fact that our costs at this point in time are out of alignment with the budget for the streetscape portion of that. There were opportunities sought to reduce that, and one of those was to curtail the use of the pedestrian scale lighting in favor of the Guardco lighting. And the proposal as a standard as of probably a day and a half ago was to limit the use of the pedestrian lights only to that short section of Main Street and the north side of Main Street. We, as a staff, were not comfortable with that. We felt that it really compromised the aesthetic that we were trying to achieve and the walkability of the area surrounding Town Square. And we've been working with engineering to see what other options might be available to certainly value engineer this so that we can stay aligned with budget to the extent that we can, but to preserve the aesthetic, that very important pedestrian aesthetic of Town Square, as it really was central to a lot of the things that we were doing on Main Street and throughout that western portion of the site. So at this point in time, it would be at least planning staff's recommendation that we look to utilize the more pedestrian-oriented lighting on both sides of Main Street, as well as all sides of the Town Square, which would still curtail the use of that fixture quite a bit as you move south of Clock Tower Place and the City Hall and Library, as well as east of the square itself on Town Square Way. So I think it's a good compromise. It allows us to save costs where appropriate, but it doesn't really compromise the aesthetic we're trying to achieve at Town Square.
Where the areas transition, so that left piece up on top there. So this will be the, what do you call it, Guardco?
The Guardco.
Okay, and then this is the traditional Cyclone or whatever?
Yes.
So does this transition going to look okay when you go from this kind of light, that kind of lighting to a different kind and then back to the other kind?
Well, I guess we would prefer that we use the pedestrian style lighting as earlier proposed. It really was a compromise to allow the greatest flexibility in the cost without sacrificing, again, the aesthetic around the Town Square. Recognizing that 6th Street itself is probably more of a collector street within development. So, I mean, you'll have those transitional issues at some point. I don't know.
I guess it does distinguish that area.
Yes, it does.
That's what you're looking. And Commission or the council might not like it, but we have budget realities we have to face, so we have to make tough decisions. Commissioner Correll?
Mayor, right to that point of the budget, I guess explain to me, where's that, we agreed on a vision, what it was going to look like, and now we're curtailing that back. Where's that coming out of? Or who? You said it affects a TIF, it's just in regards to how quickly it's paid back or not and the end number? I mean, where's it coming from?
Yeah, and
where's that budgetary restriction?
Probably not the person to speak towards the finances of the TIF, but there was a budget established for those infrastructure improvements in totality with all the other improvements at Drexel Town Square, whether it's a wetland park, whether it's the streets themselves, the water, sewer, sanitary, the storm sewer, landscaping. I mean, this is one part of that entire package.
Sure.
Unfortunately, this happens to be at the end of the kind of the bidding cycle, and we don't have the opportunity to kind of make up for those. You're right, it does represent something less than what we had spec'd out, less than what the Plan Commission had approved. I will tell you that the city administrator and finance director have been working diligently to kind of make the numbers work. And by numbers, I mean not only the investment that the city and our private partners are making in Drexel Town Square, but also balancing that against the increment that we're receiving and the time limits that we've imposed for payback on that.
There's no blank check. We set a budget.
Yeah.
We hit the budget.
Understandably, but the budget is, I mean, all of a sudden you come to us on one item, we don't get to see the rest of the items.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Who is responsible for that cost? And
It's just
how much are we saving?
I mean, I don't have the information, and I think Brian can give us some anecdotal costs on what we're saving per fixture. You're saying who, I'm sorry, what was your first question, Fred?
I'm sorry.
Who is responsible for the cost of the lighting?
That is
the
payable through
developer
the TIF
or is
district.
that the city?
That's the TIF district.
The TIF still comes under the developer then.
Go ahead.
Jerry Franke, West Park 301, West Wisconsin Avenue, Milwaukee. The TIF district pays for there's two issues, Commissioner Correll. First of all, to go to yours. First of all, the first 2+ years, our budgets, we have come in so well, it's unbelievable. I will tell you that inflation has hit the construction industry big time. You may have read about it in the Wall Street Journal, local media, things like that. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here of lighting that we can save. I think the last time I saw, and I don't know that it takes into account the alternate that is being proposed here, but we're talking like $300,000 of savings we have to either, it affects two things: how soon the TIF district is paid back, and secondly, if we go through a budget, we have to go through an approval process to exceed that budget. So that's the two things. It really doesn't affect the developer. It affects the TIF district's viability.
It's just interesting. I mean, the attorneys represented here, we've been told forever we don't look economically, and now we're looking at our own development, and we're looking at economics to compromise. I've sat up for a dozen years and said, well, this is our standard that the city sets for a building or whatever, and you got to meet it, and that's your economic responsibility. That's just the direction of my question.
Sure. Alderman Guzikowski.
I think Commissioner Krell asked the same questions. I would not be in favor of at all reducing the original look.
Well, just to finish, $300,000 is a lot of money. I get where that's coming from, but we're being asked to look at one piece at the end. So it's just difficult as a commission, Mayor, is my question why I asked that.
I'd like to make one thing perfect. This is a community decision. The developer will live with whatever the city wants. It really doesn't affect us. It affects you as a municipality.
Yeah, this is driven by a hard look at the costs of what we need to do to finish this, and I understand you think it's a compromised back. I think this is going to, I've been out there so many times, this is a spectacular development.
It is, but it also sets a
question that. I'm
tone.
just saying, Mayor, at the end, we're looking at one piece of it that we've changed instead of.
There's a lot of other things minor things that are going to change. That's the kind of the ebb and flow of a super large development that like this one is. There's going to be a lot of things. Not every decision is going to come in front of the Plan Commission. This is just one that is.
Right. And for example, and part of what we put in the staff report is there was a decision made with respect to the placement of the logo and colored concrete and with the amphitheater within the square. I mean, that the costs for that were deemed to be excessive. We are redesigning that, so there will be some design, some color within town square. It won't be that logo. That's going to be a cost savings. I mean, there will be a redesign on, and again, value engineering some of these planter boxes, which were put in there. Not that they won't be there, but they won't be, and I know I'm going to get this number wrong, but I thought it was six figures for some of these planter boxes. So I mean, we're
They're
trying.
being redesigned and re-engineered to be less expensive, but still look very cool.
That's our goal. Yes.
And not only that, but also some items will be phased in rather than constructed immediately. It might take a year or two. A good example, I don't know if we've decided finally, but a couple of shade areas in the town square. We're really probably just slowing down how quick we get some of the stuff delivered, more than trying to change the integrity of the appearance.
I know the expectation is everything is done right at the beginning. That's hard to do.
I get that.
There's realities even in materials, getting materials to finish things. So we have to play within the rules that are handed us. Commissioner Johnson?
Just a couple things. And one of the concerns in engineering has had with this design is basically with the shorter pole, you don't get the light throw covering the road. So your spacing for the lights really gets condensed. This room is roughly 40 feet across, so there's a light spacing every 40 feet along that road, which is a lot of lights. Consider Howell, that people always say we have too many lights on Howell. Those lights are spaced 150 feet. So we're really tightening up the spacing to go to this shorter pole. It's 206 lights total in the original design out here. That's 206 lights that we have to power, maintain forever on this development. What we're looking at doing is probably reducing this. The first alternate is reducing by half. We're cutting out 100 lights out of here by going to the taller pole. I think we're looking probably 2/3 of that. So we're looking at 60 lights or so that we're going to reduce it by if we continue the lights all the way around the square. And that's
I mean, I think
I like the taller lights myself personally. It's not the lighting issue to me. It's where we get involved or don't get involved, especially when the commission decisions are being council at this point. I just want to understand where.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to consider economics in factoring into your decision, because, and you're right, Pat, we told you that. I mean, your role as a plan commissioner is to look at, in this case, the aesthetics of the development. And I mean, that is the financials of that are left to other bodies, other entities. So from that standpoint, I mean, you just brought it to your attention as to why you're seeing this here.
Right. Well, he asked the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. We just have, when we're dealing with a private body that's out there proposing something and we agree to a standard, that's what we expect built. And I just want to know where our leeway was or was not.
Commissioner Chandler.
So usually with bidding on a project, you always have a secondary option for anything. So with the shorter lights, is there a secondary option that is less expensive so we can keep the pattern the same versus changing it to this?
He's looking at me. No.
There was not a Plan B, Chancellor, or Commissioner, sorry.
Okay. So are we to help propose changing? What is our impact today? That we agree to the change, that we propose a way for the savings?
I would suggest that you don't necessarily enter the savings into your consideration.
That only came into the equation because one of the commission members asked it.
Your
We're asking
role
about a
is to-
specific change in the
if it is-
structures that we're using to light the.
If it is appropriate in your minds that the Guardco fixture be utilized more prevalently in other areas of the development.
Oh, okay, so just for clarity, so we're not here to approve or not, we're just being informed?
No, you're here to, since you approved a lighting plan back in February of last year, we are asking you to, if you so chose, to approve a revised lighting plan with the fixtures in the proportions that are being proposed on this plan, or a plan that you would choose to amend, a revision to this.
I don't think that they approved a specific lighting plan in terms of number of lights.
Right.
Yeah.
That we have to do according to the code and things like that. And we are working on reducing some of the lights, around what we call the ring road, which is Town Square Way, because if you go out to Oakview Business Park, I swear we're going to offer sun tanning options out there. There's a lot of street lights out there. There's a lot of street lights on there where we feel we can cut back. Here it's more about a design thing than a quantitative thing. And that's why I believe Doug and the mayor wanted to bring it to you for conversation.
So has it been evaluated to just use all the same lights? I know it's a different visual.
I think all the same lights would then be the higher one, which we think would be a substantial negative appearance.
Commissioner Dickman.
If we don't make the changes, and as you pointed out, construction cost or cost of material are escalating, that could result then in a relook at the TIF district as far as changing it and bringing it back before us also, because we're part of the TIF district, considerations.
Yes, that's.
Okay.
Tough decisions have to be made.
Yeah.
Commissioner Carrillo.
Can you go back to the drawing of them, of the two lights? Being a graphic designer, I do a lot of street pole design and street pole flags. I think it's really important, yes, there's the difference of the lighting and the spread of the light, but the aesthetics that we can create with the visual of those flags being on all those light poles throughout our area. The larger pole, I assume, would not be able to have a flag.
You can have banners, in fact, we will have banners on some of the larger light poles on Howell Avenue and what have you. Certainly, it is a much different aesthetic when you have a banner at 20 feet versus a much more appropriately scaled banner and a 14-foot pole.
Right, and if we're not worried about, or the consideration should not be economic, I think the black poles, the Cyclone with those banners to line our area and define our area would make it much more dramatic to look at. And they're more, there'll be more of them in a row, and we kind of define the way we see other streets, whether we're in the more retail areas or, Main Street, we'll still have that look and feel of where Meyer is, that they're still part of this, and the street poles are probably the only way we're going to be able to do that.
Can you
Yeah, I agree.
clarify? I'm unclear. Are you saying with the fewer lights, the cyclones, this would be better?
The cyclone, there'll be more of them.
Yes.
And because you see that kind of little flag on one side of it, it could have a double side, and it'll define kind of like a dotted line where our area is, and that even the Meyer area and the Chick-fil-A area will still be part of the town center because they'll have those flags and those same street lights that will kind of define the whole area.
Yeah, I agree. I think as you go out to Drexel Town Square, as I've done 100 times, you're starting to see these specific areas defined, right? Myers planted 3,997 bushes, delineating their property from all of the other properties in a really nice way. They stepped it up and put planting beds. They irrigated them. It already looks good, and we're still early on. This downtown could be framed by those lower lights with the cool banners, just as the Wetlands Park will have its own unique features. So I think the definition of each of those areas as part of an 85-acre parcel is important, so people know where they're at in this, because trust me, it's a big space. When you stand on the west side, which I did this afternoon by the railroad tracks, you can barely see Water Street. It's far away. It's over a mile away, or not a mile, but half a mile. It's a long ways away. So I think those definitions are important.
Yeah.
Commissioner Johnston.
I think part of it's got answered already. So are you saying that you want the lights as is in the original plan, or are you pushing for the lights just around the entire square as your look that you're looking for?
I would love it around the entire, that it would be kind of a way to identify the area as a whole.
They never were identified, though, on West Town Square Way.
Yeah, Delco and Town Square Way all had the tall poles originally. And then it stopped here, went to the short pole through the west side. The thinking was leaving Main Street intact, because that's kind of a special area as well. And, if we do the square, that leaves that area intact as the pedestrian area. It also impacts the potential for the residents that are along there, potential hotel, Barrett's property, Wired property. Then the rest of it could go to the tall pole and be a compromise. This is going to be more of a through street, kind of like Town Square Way is.
But if on the right-hand side of the square, you have the hotel, you have, the restaurants. If you go to the right off the square, you have those, there'll be the backside of the new, so there'll be hotels and restaurants and, things, and that's, so yeah, maybe not on the far end of Meyer, the Meyer Chick-fil-A way end, but it still would define that area. Maybe not behind the City Hall?
I think a reasonable, another alternative, 6th Street is really going to be high traffic. There's going to, and we have talked with Rick Barrett as the developer of the Emerald Road property. I could see defining the City Hall property, the Town Square, and Main Street, and perhaps eliminating it on the other 2 streets. It kind of then creates this envelope, but you're the more of a design person.
Yeah, don't we think that this would be an important part where all those, all the people would exit their homes or their apartments? I know they were talking about street access, so you'd get out, out of the apartment and be able to walk down this way?
There's no apartments down here. This is a wetland.
So it's like right in here?
Detention pond. The future phase will be in this area here, right, Brian? It doesn't go all the way down.
Yeah, the whole west side this is Market Street here. The west side here, this is all a detention pond, and we have our stormwater pond here. So phase 2 for Barrett's would be on this side. Phase 1 for Barrett's is up here.
If I may just make a comment and perhaps venture a alternative for consideration, the parking lot, the lights within the parking lot for City Hall, which have been already been ordered, are the cyclone fixtures, again, in anticipation that we wanted them to match the fixtures and the poles on the adjacent streets. So a possible alternative, and certainly I encourage and appreciate a lot of the discussion that's taking place, is to, can you bring the line up again? I'm sorry. Is to, thank you. If you wanted to maintain that, is to keep the cyclone fixtures on Main Street, Town Square, and looping around the City Hall Library, which is also adjacent to all the phases of the Barrett residential development. But perhaps, again, just to acknowledge the potential cost savings, to perhaps eliminate them on at least this portion of 6th Street, maybe even this portion, and this leg of West Town Square Way.
Okay. Alderman Guzikowski.
Okay, so the height of the lights, are there different heights? Can you get the cyclone lights or lighting in it taller versus, it looks like are they two different sizes here based upon what we were going to be using versus what our new option is? Are there two different heights?
There's two different sections. The Guardco Pure Form light is on a 25-foot pole, and the Cyclone light is on a 14-foot pole. That 14-foot pole was decided on early on to try and keep it shorter for a more pedestrian feel. Yes, you can get a taller pole, go up to like a 17-foot pole. You can spread the spacing out a little bit with that. That Cyclone light is kind of like our residential light that we have now. It doesn't have a great throw to it, so you can't put it on top of the 25-foot pole and still achieve the same lighting standards.
Well, I like the aesthetics of it, and if going to a taller one might help lessen the number you use as a possibility to still give you, because when you go back to the original plan, please, Carrie, that just that just screams what we've been trying to promote the whole time, is that urban concept when you're walking down a street, is just my opinion.
Brian, just a quick question, and as it pertains to the Alderman's question, is even if you went up an additional, let's just say 3 feet, you can achieve some greater spacing of the poles, but given the unique geometry of the right-of-way and the parking lot cutouts, I question whether or not you're going to be able to, in practice, actually decrease the number of poles there.
Maybe not.
No, you wouldn't be able to. We're really limited because you got to position the lights so that they're basically falling on a stall line, because you don't want them in the middle and somebody's opening another car door running into it. So you got them on the end of the parkings and then on a stall line. So with all the parking on street that we have out here, it's really tight, really limited on where we're going to put these.
All the infrastructure for the lights is in, right? Or
No.
It's not in?
None of it is in.
Okay. I'd like to compromise that, I don't know, Doug or somebody said, I'd like to, this and then this, the rest can, we already have that other kind of lighting there. These two pieces would certainly make sense to match it as with that. That seems like a good compromise. Commissioner Chandler?
Oh, can you go over what you said, compromise again?
I would say this area here, the square, obviously, the City Hall complex, and the Main Street would be those cyclone lights.
Get rid of the tail and the 2 arms.
Yeah, get rid of the two tails.
And I would just pay attention to what is planned to be here on these two sides. There'll be the back of all those people's residential apartments, and they could be hotels, or not the hotel, but they could be
Stores.
restaurants in those, so that could be street. Somebody could be walking down the street. I'm willing to give you this one, but I almost think that the backs of these will, as somebody's driving from Meyer, will tell you that you're in this new section before you hit the square. When you hit the square, you'll know you're in the new section. That I think that these are pretty important.
Well, then you're not really essentially changing anything but this.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that one.
Yeah, save that one.
We'll save.
Okay.
You gotta draw the line, yeah.
So I just wanted to understand why, can you go to the revision? Is this the proposed revision? We didn't see this one. Oh, number 2.
Yeah, there
Number
you go.
2. Yes. So for number 1 and number 2, why did you choose this section again? I may have missed that.
Again, given what we felt was a scale back in the number of the more pedestrian scale lights to what we felt was a kind of a cautionary level, we looked at which areas make the most sense and which will have the most pedestrian activity. Clearly, Main Street and the town square are the 2 areas of the site will have the most pedestrian activity. I could make a similar case again for the block containing library and city hall and the residential apartments, but in an effort to kind of stimulate discussion and give the planning commission a plan which still accomplishes the core values of the aesthetics of the Main Street and Town Square, but still offers the development, the district, the opportunity to maintain their budget. We felt it was an appropriate compromise to bring this forward as the Town Square.
Just one more thought. This is going to be a very heavy traffic entrance into the medical complex, including emergency room. You're going to want good lighting there, in my opinion. I think if you keep the lower level lighting here, it almost has a calming effect. It may slow people down because it's not as bright, and that goes right by the apartments that Rick is developing here, City Hall, the library, the town square. You get this lighting effect of slowing you down a little bit. Enjoy the moment. This is a different place. And then down here again, you're back out into the more. There's industrial there. There is wetlands, things like that, where people won't be walking on the street as much. They'll be doing more of it over here in the wetland area. So, just
Commissioner Johnston?
I just want to point out too that, the only complaint that I've got about a street light is that it's not working, not whether it's 14 feet or 25 feet. Majority of people don't notice the lights. That's the whole goal of that they blend into the surroundings around them. I know that there's an emphasis really being pushed to create something different here and get that pedestrian feel, but say 99% of the people don't notice that light unless it's not working.
So really just kind of, we need some sort of a consensus on what, if we are going to compromise, I hate to use the word compromise, but as water drips down from the stalactites on the ceiling.
Mayor, doesn't it matter though, you talk about the I know it's not economics, but if what you propose, for example, and taking the tail and the arms off or whatever, does that get us within, without considering that, how do you decide what's the right answer? I mean, that's probably not in our body to do that if we don't know the whole.
It's not. I will tell you, it won't get us into budget on that, but it's a good start.
I mean, I think it's important to know if that's even. Thank you.
I don't think the deputy city attorney would have any problem with me straw polling on these alternatives. Yeah, I ask you tough questions before you're even in the office.
I have a real quick question too. Do we know where this is going to turn into?
It's right here,
I
isn't it,
mean,
Brian?
can it stop? Does it have to go to the road or can it go to the entrance to the hospital?
Hospital, I thought.
Can it go just a little bit up here? Does this have to go all the way down? Can it go, do we know what's going to be there? Does it have to go all the way to the edges?
there you go.
They gotta cut costs.
There's 2 entrance points actually there. There's a shared easement.
This is where the divider is between the hospital and the medical use and Rick Barrett's Emerald Row. This is phase 2, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here's Main Street and then obviously the square and City Hall.
So can we stop it right there and start the entrance? I mean,
Stop
does
it anywhere.
have to go the whole way to the road?
I think there's 2 ways to look at it. When I look at this view, the city hall and the straight, it looks almost more that it makes sense versus how we were looking at it. I know that's not how you're looking at, Commissioner, but I mean, it kind of changes the perspective, whatever picture you put up there for us.
Yeah. So you're arguing for This,
I'm not arguing for anything. To be honest with you, I don't have a real personal, no dog in the fight.
No stake?
It's more the why we're at and got to this point, but if I'm looking at, how can you not look at the economics and what gets us done? If it doesn't get done, it's not worth it. But right now, looking from here, you want to accent the square into City Hall, and if you start going off just a little bit in that direction, I don't think we're going to accomplish anything. I mean, to me, it's almost all, or you might as well cut down and really save the money, but.
so that is the official compromise position, correct? The second version, right?
It is an alternative for the planning commission to
It's
consider.
the stick with the box.
Stick with the box is the
Stick with the
first-
box plan.
The extended box is what we really were looking at, without the tail and the arms.
Yeah, they come down.
And for those of you doing the minutes on this,
Yeah, good luck.
You need short arms.
Well,
No arms at
I
all.
think, Mayor, at some point, we have to, someone has to propose one or the other and
Yeah.
see where we stand. What happens on this vote?
Is it legal?
I mean,
Which the look she gave me on the straw poll thing wasn't very good, so I'll have to back off on that idea. But I support that alternative. Commissioner Carrillo, you had your button pushed?
Oh, no.
Well, I agree with you, Steve.
There we go. So we're kind of unofficially getting where we need to go.
Okay.
Okay, this goes around the,
Square
talking
and
this
Main
bit.
Street.
And,
yeah, and it cuts off the 2 arms on the side, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, but we're looking at around the city hall as well? Because that's just the square?
No, that's only the square.
Just the square.
the original second plan was just a square.
We could.
Commissioner Carrillo, we're originally, then the second option would be to extend the box. Someone's got that one, Carrie, without the,
Around the city hall, right?
That's the T
no,
point.
go the other way, not the T, that's out. That's one, now extend and leave the tail and the arms off. You know how we brought it down?
Yeah.
We don't have
Double
enough.
box zone.
Don't have that
Okay,
option.
cut off the
Two
arms.
boxes, the 2 boxes and the pointer.
again, to reiterate, if you look at the lights in this parking lot are the cyclone light. And the reason why they were the cyclone light is because we wanted them to match the
which
lights
lot
that
is
were on the adjacent streets.
Right.
So from that perspective, that lends, I guess, additional emphasis to the proposal to extend the cyclone
Double
light.
box with
The
the
double
pointer.
box with the pointer.
Okay.
with the
Yeah.
pointer.
That's good.
All right, I feel consensus.
I think we need a motion.
Yeah.
How are you going to make a motion
I
on
don't have
that?
any paper.
You're going to have to describe the areas that those lights cover.
Just name the streets.
All right.
You might have to help him on that.
Johnson moves that the plan commission approve revisions to the plans for street lighting and town square improvements within Drexel Town Square, such that the cyclone pole and 14-foot pole will be on Main Street, around Town Square, and around the City Hall and Library along 6th Street, Market Street, and Clock Tower Way.
I have a question before it's seconded.
Sure.
So does this mean any changes to what we have approved has to come back here? Any and all changes?
No, I would say that if it is deemed substantive, which I would hope by the nature of the discussion, you would agree that this is substantive. If we feel that that's appropriate, we would bring it back, but a change which we do not feel will be substantive, we will not bring back.
And so what does that mean, substantive?
I can't tell you, I
Better run that by
evaluate
your
that on an individual basis.
So just for clarity, this change is substantive because?
Because it impacts the overall aesthetic and feel of what was supposed to be a pedestrian-oriented streetscape.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Seifert seconds.
All right, roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, no.
Speedy, aye. That's a yes.
Corral, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
Okay, I think that's all of our items, and motion to adjourn.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 8:03.
Guzekowski seconds.
Roll call.
What did she say?
Dickman. How about an aye?
Oh, aye, I'm sorry.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski,
Yeah.
aye. Corral, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Have a great night. We'll see you next Tuesday.